Nieces, nephews, and everybody in between. It's your boy Uncle Ro coming to you with another part to I didn't know my father growing up. I'll tell you a brief story about how I met my brother. So this is part 3. Last part I basically told you, hey, my mom took my father, my biological father, to court right when I was 17, right on the brink of being ineligible to receive accrued child support. Right before I was 18, she took him to court. Go back and see part 1 and 2. There are only 2 videos on my channel at this point, but it was rough. He denied me. He was, trying to say that he had 2 other sons who were from his new marriage. They're his stepsons, and so the judge awarded. Well, let's fast forward to about 10 years later. I hadn't heard much of anything from him after that. But like I told you in the first video, I was close, or I was relatively close with my grandfather, his dad, and my grandmother, and my aunt, his sister, and of course my 2 cousins, her son and her daughter. So, and I went to school with my cousin who looks exactly like me when I was growing up for about 2 years in junior high. We actually played football together. But so fast forward about 10 years later after that, after I first saw him at the court. And my grandmother was sick, so I had been to visit her a couple of times. I visited her a few times when she was a little bit better, but the last time I visited her, she couldn't speak. She just could look and smile. She was a double amputee. She had diabetes issues, and I remember the last time I went and saw her, she smiled and tears started going down her eyes. And it wasn't until later that I realized that she thought that I was her son. That's kind of what I deduced from it. I mean, she knew who I was, but I think that, the dementia and stuff like that had kicked in, and she thought that I was her son, and she was smiling and crying. But she passed not long after that. And so I go to the funeral. I'm expecting to see my biological father there. I get there, and they're like, yeah, hey, the family is here in the front, and we stand here in the foyer, and we're getting ready to process in. And I'm standing there, and I look to my right, and there's this guy. He looks exactly like me. He has some shades on, and I look at him, and I double take. I'm like, and he's like, just shook his head. I'm like, then I look to his right, and there's a guy that looked exactly like me, like a spitting image of me, just a little shorter, a little thinner. And I look at him, and he's like, turns out they were my brothers, my 2 older brothers from my biological father, from his marriage before he got with my mom. And I knew of them, but I didn't really know of them. It was kind of like they were this thing in the recesses of my memory, like that I knew about, but I didn't really fully grasp. So when I saw them, it slapped me in the face there. So I just remember being just tripping out. So we went through the funeral. My biological father was there, and I remember at the repast. For those who don't know, that's like, where in black culture anyway, we get together and eat fried chicken and green beans, stuff like that, and after the funeral, and laugh and reminisce and all that type of stuff. So I remember walking into the repast with my wife and my biological father being there, and just grabbing hold of me and walking me around, marching me around like, yeah, this is my youngest son. And yeah, he's making straight A's at Tuskegee. And I wasn't making those straight A's at Tuskegee. I was doing okay, but I wasn't making straight A's, boss. He's like, he's making straight A's at Tuskegee. He's gonna be an architect, and all this stuff. So I being the humble person that I am, I let him do it. I let him have that. He was walking me around, to different people who I didn't know. Yeah, this is my youngest son. And yeah, he's out there in Alabama doing great things, and it was cool. And he told me that he loved me and all the good stuff, which I believe he does. I just believe that, he had to make a decision, and it wasn't me. But I digress. And again, I had a good childhood. I was raised by my stepdad, and that's just encouragement again for those of you who don't have a father figure in your life. There's somebody around you that's willing to give you some advice and to give you what you need to kind of move forward in life and navigate all the issues that you might have. And I'm one of them. I'm right here. I'm right under your nose. You can subscribe if you like, for stories like this and just for advice. And I have my email attached to my YouTube if you want to reach out to me and ask me any questions. But it marched me around, all that. I got back with my brothers, my two brothers. One of them is 5 years older than me, and the other is 7 years older than me. And I mean, they look exactly like me. We act alike, but you look in their faces and you see scars, and they both had been to jail and stuff like that. And I just knew that, I was actually, God kind of called me out and pulled me out of a situation that might have been a little worse than what I grew up. And I mean, they told me like we had it rough, told me stories about finding trees under my dad's bed and jars and stuff, and they would just go in and grab a handful of trees and have some fun, and just stuff that they were exposed to that I wasn't exposed to until much later. But we talked and we're like, hey, we're grown now. We're gonna keep in touch, and there's nothing stopping us from seeing each other. Interesting fact, and I'm gonna go ahead and get off. But interesting fact was that they told me that in junior high, they were going to the high school right next, it was a small town, and high school and junior high were on the same campus, basically, just two different buildings on the same piece of land. Well, they would walk by me all the time, but my biological father had told them, don't say anything to me. Don't mention anything to me, because that's what my mom wanted at the time. And when I met my brothers for the first time, I resented my mother. I'm sorry, I'm kind of looking at the background. I resented my mom a little bit because she did what she had to do. She saw the writing on the walls. She kept me away from him, but not. It wasn't like you can't see your son, but it was just like certain things that she told me when I was growing up. I would go over there, and then I'd come back and I wouldn't have any discipline. Like I guess I got to kind of do whatever I wanted to do. And I'm like 2 and 3. And again, these were the last times that I remember being with him, riding a horse at like 3 or 4. This is the last time I remember seeing him before I saw him at age 17 in the court. But she was just saying, I would come home, I would be talking back, and there were some other things, of course, that I know I'm not privy to, but she told me about that. And I forgave her. I forgive her. I understood that she had to do what she had to do. Because again, like my brothers, like they had a rough life, and I mean, they're handsome guys like me, but you can tell, like, they're just a little rougher. They done been through some stuff, and it was just cool seeing that side of me. And so we keep in touch now. We're in touch now. But it was crazy that I was, 10, 11 years old, walking by them, and I probably looked at them and double took, like, hey, but I didn't even know. It was like out of my memory. So, yeah, that's part 3. I'm going to tell y'all another interesting story in part 4. So come back for part 4 tomorrow. Deuces.